Hi, my name is Jason Pickard. I'm going to teach you the ins and outs of restringing a classical guitar. I'm with Music 49 in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we build classical guitars here and play classical guitar. So I'm going to try to clear up some of the myths about restringing it and hopefully prevent some of the problems that people have when they aren't quite sure what they're doing, or they try to copy something that they saw on another guitar. The first thing I want to do is talk about the tools needed. If you'll notice, I've got a bench set up with a nice rug here and a neck support. Not everyone has the ability to do that at their home. So there's one tool that I would recommend, and this is by Planet Waves. We carry this at the store. It's just a folding neck rest that you could put on a countertop or a table. Just be sure and have something that it won't slide. It's got nice rubber feet on it, so I think it's a relatively inexpensive product. Works pretty good. It's not ideal as a fixed one, but it'll get you through it. And also, depending on what type of finish you have on the back and sides of your guitar, you want something. This is a bath mat actually that we're using, that we Velcroed to the tabletop. We just got it at a local store. That'll keep the back from getting scratched. It's going to move a little bit. You're going to need a place to work, but the first mistake that people usually make is trying to do this on your lap like an electric guitar. It's just not as easy. You sort of need both hands. You might even need a second set of hands the first time you do this. It's okay until you develop your own method. So that's the first tool, is you need some way of setting this guitar up and having a good workbench. The other things are some pliers. I use these pliers that have an angled face on them, angled nose I guess you should say, and some snippers. You always want to have those out there right when you're starting so that you've got an area for your tools, you can work properly. Some tape, just some regular masking tape. Nothing that's too sticky, because you can't actually pull finish off of a guitar with too sticky of a tape. So the adhesion on this, you want this to be, I've tried the painter's tape, and the painter's tape doesn't seem to stick half the time. So what I usually use is just a masking tape, and I stick it to my shirt and pull it off to get some of the fuzz on there, and then I put it on an area of the guitar, and that seems to help reduce some of the likelihood of messing up my finish, but also has a tape that'll stick. So the tape, the pliers, some sort of a string winder. These things are commonly found. This is by Jim Dunlop. I'm not a huge fan of them. I actually go a step further and have one that chucks into my drill bit. But at first, we want you to go slowly. So you may just want to use a string winder or even just your fingers. After a while, you get a forearm workout from it. So I don't do it anymore. I use one of these, but you can really mess something up if you're not paying attention to which direction the drill is going when you get started with it. And the only other thing I can think of, other than the pliers and the tape and stuff, is some synthetic steel wool. Now I use the synthetic because the real steel wool, the stuff that's actual steel, it's not so good to breathe. You don't think about the particles that are coming up in the air and getting into your lungs. I have a lot of allergies and stuff, so I keep a little steel wool in case the fingerboard, you can see actually some ebony dust and some nickel dust from frets. If we need to do anything to the fingerboard, we'll use this because it doesn't seem to stir up as much dust, and if it is, at least I'm not breathing in little bits and pieces of iron, and that makes me feel better about it. I guess if you're going to use that, you could use a mask and it's going to leave debris everywhere, but if you have, this is just something I got from a hardware store. It's 5 zeros, so we call it 5/0 steel wool, which is a very fine steel wool. It won't remove anything. It's safer than your average Brillo pad that you use for cleaning dishes or something. So it won't scratch stuff. We're not going to be using it on the finish of the guitar, just maybe on the fingerboard, depending on what you need. That's something nice to have. You can cut off little scraps to make it more manageable. And then some strings, and you're set to go. Alright, next up in stringing the classical guitar, our method at Music 49 with Jason Pickard, selecting a string. Now, first and foremost, if you have a handmade instrument and the builder has suggested a string or a string gauge, you always want to stick to that first, because they know internally what goes on in this instrument and what works. So if you're in that position, which that would be an expensive guitar, that's an investment, you want to refer to them if you're going to change anything or if you have a problem. It might be something that they need to adjust, or if you don't like the way it sounds or plays, it might be best for them to pick where you should experiment. But for the rest of us who don't have this $9,000 handmade guitar, you're dealing with a production instrument that's got a lot of finish on it, and the tops are usually relatively stiffer on those instruments, then we can experiment. It's just like any other guitar. In fact, there's a little bit more freedom, because sometimes you can buy bass sets of strings separate from the treble sets of strings. And I've found most of my success in making guitar sound right that way. I think there's a paradigm of, I use these strings, and these are the ones that work best for me. And I think that developed a lot from electric guitars and just marketing and stuff. With classical guitar, you can mix and match these. I mean, there are some people who use a different type of third string only, just the G string, from a different brand of manufacturer. They like the way it sounds better, and I'm okay with that. Especially if you have a spare guitar, you can mix and match sets of strings and then put whatever you have left on the spare guitar. Always keep fresh strings on it as well. That's a nice thing about having a quote-unquote beach guitar. But what I'm going to do with this guitar today is I'm going to mix and match two sets of strings the way I like it. The basses are going to be from D'Addario, or D'Addario, I hope I said that right, the Pro Art composite strings. Those basses on those strings seem to last a little longer for me. I think we're going to go with a hard tension bass on this particular guitar because I want a little bit more pull on the bass side. It does make a difference. I've tried hard tension on bass, hard tension on treble, regular basses, and a lot of different mixtures of that. It does make a difference on your guitar, and over time it makes more and more a difference. So it'll take 2 or 3 string changes, but it might actually make your guitar sound better. So I encourage it. You have to do it in a way that you know which one came first. So keep a journal in your guitar case. Write down, the month that you put them on, which strings you put them on, and how old those strings were maybe. You don't want a set of strings sitting in the closet for 2 years that you just happen to pull out and expect they're going to be fresh strings. It doesn't really, in my experience, it doesn't work like that. So we're going to use the D'Addario heavy tension bass, and then I'm going to use a Savarez, or Savaret, it's a French string, Alliance 540Rs for the trebles. These strings seem to have a little bit more tension, and they're smaller in diameter. So the complaint about them is that they create a little bit of a nick in your string if you're practicing a lot, because they're smaller and they're tighter. So a lot of people in free stroke situations, Toronto, they feel like it makes a little bit of a crevice in their string, and they prefer the bigger, fatter string that the D'Addario has, or some of the other companies. I'm not sponsored or pushing either one of those products. I think you should find out what works for you. We're not in any way affiliated with one particular more than the other. We sell different strings here at Music 49. I think you need to find what the guitar wants. Absolutely. If you use one manufacturer's third string and somebody else's first and second, and then different basses, I'm all for it, as long as you calculate what's happening. Keep it in your journal. Write down, this time I used these trebles and these basses, and then maybe even make a note the next time you go you go to change strings. Make a note. They seem to last a little longer, or the basses last a little longer. That's the thing about the Savaret. I feel like the basses are great for the first 2 weeks, and maybe it's just my playing style, maybe it's my guitar. It may not have anything to do with the string, but the D'Addarios seem to last a lot longer. So just take your time, make sure that you're spending your money where it counts, and keep track of it before you get going, especially if you have a nicer instrument and you're really trying to get the maximum sound you can. Alright, so we've discussed the tools for restringing this classical guitar, the materials needed, the different types of strings. Now it's time to get to the bread and butter of things. The fingerboard, I don't really like to do a lot to the fingerboard. Some people prefer lemon oil. I am not a fan of it. Sometimes I'll put like a walnut oil, just a little thin coat, or maybe some olive oil on it. Actually, extra virgin olive oil. The late John Gilbert gave me that tip and trick. Works great. Doesn't leave anything slimy on your board. If the board looks kind of rough, again, you can take the 5/0 synthetic steel wool and just knock a little bit of that off there. There's no need to make this spick and span. The oils from your fingers not a bad thing really for ebony or rosewood. It actually kind of acts like a finish on the string, unless your perspiration is really acidic. If you drink a lot of soft drinks, sometimes cigarette smokers have this problem. They leave a real gummy fingerboard, in which case, you know, you might have to get some sort of a cleaner. I'm sort of against it. I like to just a little bit of 5/0 steel wool. You're not really trying to polish the fret so much. You're just trying to clean off a little bit of the board, and then be nice to have some more oil on there. So maybe some extra virgin olive oil, just something you can get at the grocery store. Really, really thin coat. I'm going to skip it on this guitar. It's an older guitar, a little bit dingy, and you know, the fingerboard's in good shape. Not too dirty though, so I like it. Now, before I start stringing, I want to make sure that I've got the saddle in the proper place, because this thing's angled, and the builder did that for a reason. And if it fell out on you, you want to make sure that it's in there the right way. Same thing with the nuts, so be careful. That's why a workspace is nice, because these things move around on you, especially on the finer instruments. You know, they're not glued in, and you want to make sure that they're in the right spot so that you're not restringing this guitar backwards. Okay, so now that I'm sure that those are in the right place, and I'm not going to mess with any of that because that's set up by someone else, you know, and we don't need to do any of that. All we need to do is get fresh strings on it and go from there. Now the tape, where it's going to come in, if you notice, this guitar has a string burn right here, nasty little ding. Boy, it's one of the annoying things, and one of the reasons I wanted to make this video was because this happens a lot. That's whenever the nylon string slips out, whenever you're stringing it up or whenever you're playing it, and it'll just slingshot back and slap the guitar. It can literally make a hole in the guitar. It's a nasty problem. I'm going to show you a trick, simple trick to fix that. You can just take the pack of strings, and if you want, you can maybe even rip it in half or something like that. But I like to just sort of put it up there close to this area with a couple pieces of tape, and just hold it down. Again, if you've got French polish on the top of your guitar or something else, then maybe stick this tape on your shirt a couple times, and you know, make sure that you've got enough room to work back there. But just get something protective. I personally use either a credit card or a driver's license. I just didn't want to put it on video for this thing. I'll put a credit card or driver's license back there because the plastic's really hard and it's nice and thin and it can get underneath there. But this will work right here. This will offer you some protection. So if something slips, just keep that on there until the whole thing's done. Now, on your string, you're going to have two different ends. You're going to have this really flexible end and then a really stiff end. A lot of folks like to use this flexible end here on the 6th string especially because it's more pliable, easier to twist. That's fine. I just don't like to have that flexible part coming in here into the playing area. I like for that flexible part to stay back here. So if you're going to use that, make sure it measures out back here. I'm going to use the other end just because I like to do that. And you'll notice the first thing I do is cinch up a little bit of a curve here and stick it through there, just because it helps me get through there a little easier without pliers. And then this is simple right here. You're going to go around, you're coming in through the hole and leave enough room to work. Now you're going to need to come around the string and make a crimp. Okay, so you're right here. I'll take that back apart. This is what it looks like now. You're going to go in from the outside. I always prefer to go around from the treble side, come in, and then I'm going to wrap over at least twice. All right, so that gives me this look right here, and then I'm going to pull it tight. Okay? There's virtually no way that's gonna come undone on me. There's different ways to do it, but if you go over twice, make that crimp first, you're in good shape. Okay? I'll show you on a treble string also. I'm gonna do a 1st string. Now these are the ones that usually create the string burns, the 1st string or the 3rd string, and they can really be annoying because they're thinner, especially this Savaret string. I call it Savarez, just speaking redneck. Same thing. I'm going to go through here, come around from the bottom side, crimp. I'm going to pinch that. That way I don't have to fight it. And then I'm going to come through here and loop over twice. All right, if you do that, there's very little chance of that string coming out. That's your typical classical guitar stringing method right there. If you take it apart, it looks really intimidating, but all it is 2 over loops. I'll take it undone again. I've got my little hook in there as to where I want, how far I want the string to go through. Now you got to be careful because you want enough room on the other end to tie it into the tuning machines. So you can't use too much extra here, but just crimp it, go around and over twice. Then hold the remainder, pull it tight. And that's the basic classical knot. That's the traditional way of doing it. Alright, so now we've got the strings fastened at the bridge area. I tend to do things one string at a time when I'm stringing a guitar, but just for the video purpose, and if you like it that way, you can go ahead and fasten them all the way to the end, and then we can get up here to the tuning machines. Now this nut, again, you know, it can slide, and that's okay as long as it fits in there good as the builder had originally intended. But our goal is to get through the slot the straightest path to the tuning machine. So you'll see that if I pull this straight through here, the hole is over to the side of it in the tuning machine. So that means that whenever I'm going to go through the hole and I'm going to tune or wind the string this direction to have the straightest path. All this deviation, if you tune wrap the wrong way and you have too many wraps on it, that's going to cause tuning problems. You can see how actually the string wants to come out of there whenever you're pulled too far this way and you put tension on it. This is a reason for a lot of people's tuning problems with the classical guitar. It's not necessarily just because of the nylon strings. Sometimes it's the way people string them up. And having 1,000 wraps doesn't help that any. It just gives more area for movement. So we want to get the straightest path, and we want to get it in here cinched in as tight as we can. So we'll start by coming in from the top, pulling the string snugly, not necessarily tight yet, then come up through the bottom, and since I know I'm going to go this way, I'm actually going to come around from that side with the string. Now I'm going to create a little bit of tension here and cinch backwards. Once I grab that from beneath, this is a little more difficult than it looks sometimes. I'm going to make sure that I got everything set here, and I'm going to actually start. I'll grab my string winder to speed things up. Start tuning. Once you start feeling a little bit of tension, you don't want to over tighten. See, I'm going that direction, trying to straighten this up here, trying to get that line. You could make all kinds of measurements and be precise about it, but the goal is the same. So get it over there. Now, when you look at the way I'm here, the string is cinched underneath the original winding, and now we're forced to make another loop. Sometimes, and I don't do this on bass strings so much, but you could actually come through across again and trap it underneath there if you feel like you need to. I do that on treble strings for sure, but it's up to you as to which kind of string you're using and what material these tuning pegs are made out of. If it's something really slippery, then you may need to do that. Now I'm going to skip to the 4th string, because now, you know, we're in a different situation here where we've got to go this direction. So I really want this string to be as close as I can to the edge, you know. So a lot of people really pull it over here, and if you can avoid that, I think it's a good thing from a tuning standpoint. So I'm really going to try to keep this string tight when I'm stringing it. I'm going to go through, and I might even put it in the 5th string slot at first. And I know I'm going to be tuning this direction or winding that direction, so I'm going to come in from that side to loop around. And again, I'm just going to try to tighten everything up and trying to keep it snug. And now I'm tuning it. You might have to help the string along a little bit to go that direction. And on this one, you know, I'm trying to keep that string compact. Now, I'm in the 5th string tuning slot, so before it gets too tight, I'm going to move it over there to try to help it along. And I think on this one, I mean, I really want that string to be anchored good. I think on this one, I'll make another loop back. Well, it might be getting too tight, so don't over tighten. Just get to this point where it's holding the nut in place and you like it, and do a few strings. I'm going to hop to the 1st string also, just to show you the slipperiest string. This is the one that tends to be the toughest, especially with the 540R strings that I'm using. You know, this hole is quite a bit bigger than the string, so it can just really be a pain. We know we want to get over here, we want to get over there, so we're going to be tuning it that direction. So just loop through. Some of your nicer tuning machines have a smaller pressed in hole there. I'm going to come in from the bottom. You know, another thing I've done here that I'll show you is I have actually looped through twice, just because that hole's big enough. Someone in college showed me that trick, and I don't know how much it helps, but it makes me feel better. So I looped through twice even on that one. There's plenty of room in there to do so, and I know we're going to need to come around the horn here and really try to get that thing cinched against itself, and then pull back there. And again, we're going to try to get it into a straight line to do that direction. And I fully expect that we'll be needing to go underneath this string again. I just want it to be cinched down as good as possible. Right there, so I'm going to go underneath this again. We're starting to get a little bit of sound there. And that may be as tight as you want to go to make sure you're not breaking the string. Now I've got a little bit of room, you know, if I need to move the string this way, I can track it. If I'm going to have to put more windings, whatever, I'm going to guide it. But you can see the difference of the angle coming through on this nut here. You know, this string's going to be a little more of a problem with tuning than these two strings are, just from a deflection standpoint. So I want you to try to, you know, what I want to teach you is to try to control that as much as possible and get these strings going where you want to. You'll find in the end, it's after the strings are a week old that the tuning process becomes much more simplified, because you've got less of a variable here from friction in the nut area and just deflection, bending as it comes and takes all these compound angles and such. Okay, so now this is my typical method of how the guitar is going to be strung. And you might notice that I haven't used the pliers yet in this video. I've done this a few times, so I just kind of get through there with my fingernails, and sometimes I smash my finger, of course, so that's never good. But I haven't had to use them. I guarantee you, though, at some point in time, you'll need some pliers like this. So it's better to have them on hand, that way the tool's there. It's not very expensive, and it'll keep you from being frustrated quite a bit. I've got this somewhat in tune, and I'm close. I know they're going to stretch a lot, but I'm really looking at how the string is tracking. That's a big point of importance to me. You know, I'm almost on the side of the headstock, and I don't like it. Honestly, as a builder, I might modify something there just to get closer to being straight, but you know, as a novice, I don't recommend that if you're not really comfortable. You don't want to go digging and scratching up your guitar and stuff. So again, another recommendation is not to clip these strings until you're done with everything, and maybe even until you've played it for a day. It'll look like your guitar needs a haircut, but if you need to rewind anything or stretch it or pull it again, having plenty of string here. So I'm gonna use these little nippers, and I'm not gonna cut it close, really. I mean, I don't want stuff rattling around up here, but I'm gonna cut it. You know, I'm gonna leave myself about an inch maybe, and curl it through the other side. That's what I'm gonna do with with pretty much all of them. Just because, you know, sometimes things happen. I want to get them out of the way, but, you know, I might have to retie a string. You know, this is not, it's working on guitars. It's not such an exact process. Now, that's what I would do just for a preliminary clip. I might even clip this one a little more. I don't know. Make sure that it's off of the guitar. You can bend them around and everything like that so they're in good spot. If you notice, there's no first string. Well, I'm glad it happened, but it just happened to happen while we were stringing the rest of these strings here. The first string slipped out at the bridge. So I'm going to show you a tip I was going to try to avoid showing people just for all the safety involved. But I'm going to put the guitar to the side, and I'm going to show you what happened. So where we had it tied securely, the first string came off. Again, very common with these smaller composite sort of strings. Well, I don't think this is a composite string, but it's a smaller diameter string, the Severet 540R, normal tension, I think. Now I'm going to fix it to where it doesn't slip. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a lighter. Again, I guess by the book, you know, have a fire extinguisher or whatever you need. You know, be safe about this. Maybe even do it outside. Don't do it near your guitar, anywhere near your guitar. Just make sure that you're really careful. Keep your fingers far enough away. You may want to hold it with pliers, but just wave the flame. Just barely touch the flame to that string and make a little ball there. All right. I'm going to use that on the other end to where this thing won't slip out again. You may find that the strings you use, especially if you use these brand of string, the 540R, that you have to do it. I don't like to do it unless I have to, because I don't like applying heat anywhere to the string. See, it's already cool enough to touch after a second, so it doesn't have to get hot. You don't want to burn it. Don't put yourself in danger. Use all safety precautions, whatever you got to do. But that's the way it looks. Okay, so we dealt with a first string slipping out. And I had my protection back here, so no string burn was caused, but this happens. I mean, I've restrung 1,000 classical guitars, and the one time I do a video, it does it on this particular guitar. It's the first time I restrung this one. So it's going to happen to you at some point. That's okay. If you'll notice, I've already restrung the second string just as a precautionary. When the first string slipped, I put the little melted end on there. So we've melted a little ball on the end of the string here, and we're going to use that as a catch because I don't want any more flexion than I have to have in here. So I'm going to do the same thing though. I'm probably even going to use about the same bends that were there on the string before. I'm going to go around the edges. I may try to tighten it up a little bit because I want this ball to be pushed tightly up against the string. And I'm going to go over twice. You know what? I'm going to go over another time on this one for good measure because it seems like the string is pliable enough. The process is what's really important. Just making sure that the concept is done. We just want this thing not to move here. Alright? It doesn't look quite as pretty, but now whenever you pull that thing tight, if it wants to go through the loop, it can't, because now it's got a little plastic ball that's basically going to pull it against itself. So that's something that you may find you need. I've also seen people come through the neck string. I don't like to tie them together like that. I just, this is via John Gilbert. John's the one that actually introduced it to me, and it's really saved me a lot of times, you know. And hopefully the string never gets to tension, and you're using some sort of protection back here so that you don't have a string burn. It's no real surprise that this guitar already had a string burn on it, because it's quite possible that over time this hole has worn and it just doesn't hold treble strings as good, you know, because there happens to be a string burn. And luckily I had some protection back here, so when it slipped out when I was tuning up to tension, it didn't hurt anything. So, you know, lesson learned, obviously practice what you preach, and this is the fix in that whole thing. So hopefully this helps you out and you're on your way to never having to pay someone to restring your classical guitar again.